Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here. I'm Susan Edmondson, CEO of Downtown Partnership and also Executive Director of the Downtown Development Authority. And, well, sure, thanks. And welcome to our 8th annual State of Downtown Report Release Reception. Wow, this is really active. With this report, we share the data, trends, and analysis to inform key stakeholders, like all of you here in this room, in making sound business decisions downtown. So while everyone here may find something of value, this report is created especially with investors, brokers, developers, retailers, civic leaders, and property owners in mind. Now, we're pleased to have among us today several elected leaders. So if you serve our city, county, state, federal, or school boards in an elected or key leadership role, please stand so we can recognize you. I saw several here. I also want to recognize our board members of Downtown's family of organizations, which includes Downtown Partnership, Downtown Ventures, the Greater Downtown Colorado Springs Business Improvement District, and the Downtown Development Authority, as well as our Downtown Advisory Council. So if you serve on a downtown board or committee, could you please stand? Look at all these great volunteers. The State of Downtown report is published by the Downtown Development Authority, which is guided by a mission to build public and private investment partnerships that promote the physical and economic growth of downtown. The work of the DDA is carried out by the Downtown Partnership, which serves as the management company for downtown and provides the staffing for our family of organizations. Throughout the year, staff supports hundreds of property owners, prospective investors, and potential new businesses considering expansion into our market with insights and data while supporting our existing businesses and property owners with entitlements, tenant prospecting, growth strategies, marketing, and partnership opportunities. And while DDA resources help support this vital work, it's important to acknowledge that about half the revenue powering the staffing and programs of Downtown Partnership comes directly from those of you in this room as our members and sponsors. Each of you serves as a critical partner in fostering economic growth and creating a vibrant downtown. So for this essential partnership, we thank you. All right, now we'll see if we can figure this out. There we go. So making this late afternoon gathering a little more celebratory is our hospitality sponsor. Join me in thanking Peak Innovation Park. And our title sponsor this year, Underline, is playing a key role in providing the infrastructure for a thriving downtown. Last year, Underline began connecting residents and businesses in central Colorado Springs to its open access, ultra-fast fiber network. With up to 100 gigabit speeds for enterprise clients, Underline is making possible the super fast internet that increasingly is in demand by downtown residents and businesses. So thank you, Underline, for your sponsorship of today's event. I have one more thank you that I want to mention, and that's our chair of the DDA, Ingrid Richter. This is Ingrid's last State of Downtown as chair because she, I know, I don't want to look at you. She will be term limited out this summer. She has served 2 4-year terms, so that's 8 years of service to the DDA, many of those as chair. She has been a source of wisdom and support and friendship, and she leads with integrity, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate all you've done. So a little token for you. All right, enough to the soft stuff, right? Well, we'll get started here. Okay, so first, some technicalities. Most of the data reported today tracks specifically within the DDA boundaries, although occasionally data may align with our business improvement district boundaries, the 80903 zip code, or the census tracts that align with our downtown. Our DDA is about 120 city blocks. That's just a little over 1 square mile. That's less than 1% of the city's landmass. Now, I will also note that our printer was an overachiever this year and actually mailed out the report a week early. So some of you who are members may have already seen it in your mailboxes. So do know that as you leave today, we'll provide you a copy of the report, so there's no need to take notes on anything you may see presented on the screen. And we often find that some companies desire bulk copies of the report. So if you would like bulk delivery, please just drop your business card at the front desk afterwards, and we will follow up with you. And finally, this presentation also is being recorded for future use, and we're happy to make a modified presentation to your business or civic organization if you're interested. Okay, so it seems like a lifetime ago, but I can't help but point out that 3 years ago on this very day, we were all hunkered down, working from home during the pandemic, and our small businesses were completely shuttered. Downtown suffered an existential crisis, even as big box stores and fast food chain drive-thrus were allowed to remain open. So that spring, the Downtown Development Authority provided nearly $670,000 in grants to 95 small businesses, and other local and federal efforts buoyed our independent shops and restaurants. So now, nearly 3 years later, 93% of those downtown businesses provided grants by the DDA are still in business. That's a rate of small business resiliency that's remarkable, even without such historic challenges. So let's take a look at, we'll get this here, at overall visitation to downtown. And as we'll do a couple times this afternoon, we'll go all the way back to 2019, which is our sort of last full pre-pandemic year. At visitorship, you see here, which is shown in purple, has essentially fully rebounded. And as we'll show in more detail a little bit later, employees are back, although not in the numbers we were seeing pre-pandemic, which of course is not too surprising. Now, downtown experiences just shy of 12 million visits annually, also representing about 1.9 million unique visits or visitors. So while pandemic recovery has been solid, we all know that businesses and development were hit in the aftermath by supply chain challenges and labor issues, as well as soaring material costs. Now, the good news is construction material costs peaked in early 2022 and have dropped significantly since then, though we're still sitting well above 2019 prices. Now, commercial real estate brokerage Berkadia states that before the pandemic, the average construction timeline for multifamily projects ranged from 16 to 23 months. Now, as of the first quarter of 2023, they're saying the average timeline for construction is between 23 and 32 months. And that, of course, are projects that were able to secure their financing at more favorable terms and be able to move forward. So you'll see these trends reflected in our investment pipeline. And where does that pipeline stand? Downtown is now experiencing about $2.3 billion in investment over the past decade. That's awesome. We like words that start with a B as in billion. That's a 7.5% growth over the year prior. Now, this is more modest growth that can be attributed to some of the factors that we just mentioned, and particularly there are a few projects that are hitting pause due to the slowing of capital markets. And also, frankly, as that development number and investment number goes up, it will take even bigger dollars to see that percentage change reflected. So those are some of the factors playing into that. So just a reminder about our investment tracker, the announced category is rigorous and reflects only those projects with firm development plans or that have been broadly and publicly announced. There is much more projected for downtown's future that is not showing up in that announced category. So other good news, downtown experienced a 16% growth in projects that are now either completed or moving into that under construction category in this past year. So work is continuing at a healthy pace. And in fact, downtown saw 29 certificates of occupancy issued in 2022, which was more than double the 14 issued the year prior. As we've noted in the past, thank you. It's the new South End powering much of downtown's mojo, followed by strong investment directly in the city center and a combined 18% with Park Union and the Southwest. The takeaway from this chart, however, is that healthy growth and investment is occurring in all districts of downtown. Downtown's designation as a federal opportunity zone continues to reap rewards, with about $660 million in projects leveraging a qualified opportunity fund. So given the time value of money in opportunity funds, that tool has seen most of its potential play out at this point. Through the DDA's ability to leverage tax increment financing, to close the gap on the higher costs of urban construction, we now have 18 active TIF reimbursement agreements, most for multifamily projects, but also exceptional commercial projects such as the Trolley Block and Kinship Landing. Now, nearly 1/3 of downtown's investment pipeline has been catalyzed by this TIF. And fully half the private investment in that development pipeline has been brought to fruition by the ability of TIF to help these projects move forward. We think it's a superb demonstration of how we use the tools available to us to further our downtown renaissance. So a quick look at these investments broken down by public or government investment, nonprofits, and private investment shows that early investment years ago in public infrastructure, such as the improvements to the Cimarron I-25 interchange, coupled with nonprofit attractions such as the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum and Ed Robeson Arena, have now stimulated the private investment we're seeing in apartments, hotels, and other commercial properties. So again, that whole green sector representing the private investment that has followed. So a little more data on the construction and permitting end. The 585 building permits issued in 80903 last year had a total value of $255 million and represented 6% of permits citywide and 14% of permit value citywide. So in the past 5 years, downtown, again, less than 1% of the city's landmass, has represented 7% of permits and 12% of permit value citywide. And I promise you we're going to continue to keep punching above our weight. All right, so let's switch to the star of the show today, and that is residential. I will cut to the chase and give you the headline. Downtown is on track to deliver nearly 2,000 new residential units in the next 2 years. Yeah, that's going to change things. So expressed another way, in the past 6 or 7 years, we've added about 600 units. So that's a pace of about 100 units a year. We're now entering a pace of 1,000 units a year for the next 2 years. So that's 12 projects under 9 different developers. First out of the gate, the plaza at Pikes Peak, Phase 1 of VIM, and the Village at New South End are leasing now, with more to come in the next several months. Of the dozen or so projects under construction or expected to break ground this year, all except one are in the New South End or the East End. That one exception is the Experience at Epicenter, Widener apartment homes units that will boast a spectacular view of all the fun at Widener Field. Now, Pikes Peak Regional Building permitted the most apartment units in its history last year at nearly 5,000, and nearly 20% of those were downtown. All right, so how are rents looking? Fourth quarter asking rents were up 7.8% year over year to about $17.87, though it is worth noting that this rate of increase is just over half that of the year prior. Cap rate compression continues, but is showing signs of leveling off, averaging about 4.2% last year. And downtown continues to command higher rents per square foot than citywide. At $253 per square foot, that's 48% higher than citywide at $141 per square foot. Now, that's not surprising given that downtown is seeing primarily newer products entering the market. So about 13.5% of housing units recently delivered or in the near-term pipeline downtown can be categorized as subsidized or deeply affordable. Of note, late last year, nearly 150 affordable workforce units opened under a master lease at Bijou West, and Work Infusion at Mill Street, an affordable tiny home village with supportive services for young adults, welcomed its first residents. Yeah. So, who's living downtown? Apparently it's hipsters drinking Coors and White Claw and eating charcuterie by the pool. Yes, like all the photos in this presentation, that is a local photo. Demographics tend to mirror those of citywide, as you can see. 37% have a bachelor's degree or higher. 2/3 have lived downtown 10 years or less. 77% are renters, very different than what you would see citywide. And 1/3 of employed downtowners either work from home or commute by bike, transit, or walking. We love to see that. Yeah. So we're going to switch gears now and look at small business, particularly retail and food and beverage. So here to take that on is our Economic Development Manager, Austin Wilson Bradley.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Austin Wilson Bradley, and it has been my privilege to join the team at the Downtown Partnership in October of last year, and I've been truly enjoying my role as Economic and Community Development Manager since. Downtown's momentum coming out of the pandemic continued strong in 2022, even through some significant headwinds fueled by global inflation, labor shortages, and supply chain backlogs. Downtown saw 25 new dining and retail establishments open for business in 2022, both from seasoned local operators taking on a second or third venture, and new entrepreneurs taking a chance on their first brick and mortar storefront or restaurant. This pace of openings is on par with recent years, other than the outlier blockbuster year of 2021. Looking at traffic to three of downtown's most popular areas, the Tejon Retail Spine near Acacia Park, Restaurant Row on Tejon Street between Pikes Peak and Colorado, and the Trolley Block at Tejon and Moreno, we can see that the number of visitors holds strong. The Trolley Block has surged thanks to popular restaurants and bars like Dos Santos, Cork and Cask, Coati, and others. Restaurant Row has recovered reasonably from the pandemic, but is likely feeling a loss in the lunchtime office traffic and competition from new eateries. Downtown businesses generated nearly $450 million in gross sales in 2022. That's up 9.2% from last year, and a significant 35% from the pandemic-era low in 2020. Unsurprisingly, downtown's restaurants and bars led the way. Revenues are up by 92% over pandemic-era lows, and even up by almost 25% over 2019's pre-pandemic performance. In fact, downtown's bars and restaurants raked in over $10 million in sales every month from March through July, and saw a record-breaking $11.5 million in sales in December. In total, our restaurants and bars grossed just shy of $119 million in sales last year. Retail also performed better in 2022 than in 2021, and its best month was December, as you'd expect. Although this year, our shops brought in $25.7 million in sales, which was down a little bit from over $28 million in 2021. Now keep in mind, this sales growth is partly due to inflation, as well as simply additional shops and restaurants in the downtown inventory. So while that 25% growth over 4 years for bars and restaurants means downtown's food scene is a powerhouse for the city, that doesn't mean that individual proprietors are seeing that same rate of growth. Looking briefly at the retail side for our retail sector, the real estate side for our retail sector, space downtown is in demand and there is not a whole lot of availability. Mid-2022 saw vacancy rates in the 4 to 5% range, but ended the year back down at only 3.1%. Still, average rents did fall a little more than $3 per square foot from about $19 to about $19 from 2021's highs. We're also experiencing a handful of high visibility storefront properties leased but sitting vacant awaiting tenant improvements, or some simply being taken off of the market temporarily. 2022 did see some of downtown's long vacant properties find new tenants. Those of us who grew up here still may feel a ping of nostalgia for the old Michelle's Chocolatiers, which sat mostly vacant since 2007. Now that Tejon frontage is home to Munchies, a restaurant and bar run by Chuck and Mary Ann Thomas, who leveraged the success of their food truck into a full brick and mortar restaurant. We also saw conversion of property into food spaces, such as the Well Food Hall and Trainwreck Bar and Play Place. Turning now to tourism and attractions, which is always a fun topic here in the City for Champions. 2022 was an exciting year for downtown as we celebrated the opening of the new dual-branded Marriott property, which boasts 261 rooms across its Spring Hill Suites and Element by Westin concepts, not to mention the swanky bar called Luminate on the roof, which is now officially downtown's highest rooftop bar. With this latest addition to downtown's hotel offerings, we've doubled the number of hotel rooms downtown in just a 4-year period. 1,060 hotel rooms are now in our city center. Downtown had more overnight stays in 2022 than 2021, but with the addition of the new rooms, the average occupancy rate at 60.4% was a little lower. Likewise, the average daily rate, or ADR, was down just a little bit to $154, but it's worth noting that our downtown hotels still demand a premium over the citywide ADR of $139. I mentioned City for Champions earlier. 2022 was the first year in which all 3 downtown City for Champions venues were open for the entire year. Widener Field brought in an estimated 283,000 visitors. And by the way, congratulations to the Switchbacks for advancing to the Western Conference Finals in their best season ever. Colorado College's Ed Robeson Arena hosted over 64,000 fans for hockey home games, as well as over 150 other events that attracted over 100,000 visitors to the arena. And our U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum brought in over 84,000 ticket visitors, not to mention over 60 Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame athletes for the June induction ceremonies. For anyone struggling with the quick mental math, that's over 534,000 people coming to downtown for the 3 City for Champions venues, which is not only great for the venues themselves, but also for our shops, restaurants, and bars as well. Now, for just a little bit of fun, let's take a look at the top 5 days for visitorship in 2022. Our number 1 day downtown was Saturday, December 3rd. Can anyone guess what that might be that brought the most people downtown? There we go, the Parade of Lights, and also, of course, a big holiday shopping day. We had over 73,000 people downtown that day. How about number 2? Number 2 was Saturday, March 12th. And just like very recently, downtown was filled with emerald green and the luck of the Irish. Nearly 62,000 people enjoyed the St. Patrick's Day Parade and perhaps a pint or 2 of Guinness as well. And how about number 3? Number 3 was Friday, June 24th. That was FanFest, the USOPM's Hall of Fame events, and a Switchbacks game. Collectively, that brought over 61,000 people downtown that day. And we'll also give an honorable mention to September 15th, which saw the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend and Fiestas Patrias, as well as June 18th, which saw the Juneteenth Festival and another Switchbacks game. Both days brought over 50,000 people downtown. Now let's take a quick look at the bigger picture of who's coming downtown for shopping and dining. The good news is that we've nearly recovered to the pre-pandemic footfall of about 12 million visits annually. 2022, represented by the magenta line, slightly underperformed the pre-pandemic 2019 shown in orange, but it exceeded 2019 visits in July and mostly tracked even with 2019 and 2021 in the latter half of the year. The downtown trade area shows about 225,000 people and nearly 95,000 households within 5 miles. But that's 5 miles as the crow flies, which isn't really quite enough to capture our true market. The key is looking at the 70% true trade area, i.e. people who are actually coming downtown. And that draws from a population of nearly 450,000 and about 172,000 households with higher household income. Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about the office market and talent. Downtown comprises about 17% of office space citywide at just over 5 million total square feet. Bucking national trends where some urban centers continue to see office vacancy rates topping 20%, space downtown remains tight, although we are seeing a little bit more of the expected effects of office downsizing and remote work. Vacancy rates crept up throughout 2022, beginning the year at 4% and ending at 5.7%. Still much lower, though, than citywide vacancy, sitting at 9.1%. 2022 saw about 140,000 square feet of leasing activity downtown, but nevertheless, net absorption dipped back into negative territory. Average rents barely budged from the year prior, although average sales price per square foot downtown jumped 20% to just shy of $200. But here's an interesting trend. Buyers have shifted quite dramatically. Nearly 2/3 of buyers last year were national and about 1/3 were local, whereas in previous years that was reversed, with about 2/3 of buyers being local and 1/3 national. Downtown continues to command higher rents per square foot than citywide, as well as some of the lowest vacancy rates, but with increasing competition from the north and northeast parts of the city in particular. Let's take a quick moment to juxtapose our downtown's office market with the nation as a whole. It's projected that the U.S. will end this decade with 1.1 billion square feet of office space in inventory. And while much of that qualifies as natural vacancy and turnover, some of it will be attributed to permanent changes due to remote and hybrid working environments, meaning the U.S. may end this decade with an estimated 55% higher level of office vacancy than prior to the pandemic. Now, there are some reasons why those conditions don't really apply to Colorado Springs, where we really haven't seen new vertical office products since the turn of this century. This fact alone makes our challenges a bit different than the problems faced by other downtowns. It remains true that newer Class A office products are still in demand in many cities, and highly amenitized buildings still outperform lesser products, as office tenants are realizing that maybe more than a laptop in a cubicle is going to be required to get employees into the office and retain them long term. And what are the in-demand amenities that downtown itself already offers? An accessible location with transit options, a walkable area rich in services, nearby restaurants and bars to meet a coworker for coffee or take a client to dinner. Some amenities can be programmed by businesses or by building management, wellness services, fitness classes, and group building activities, just to name a few. But other in-demand amenities are found in either new Class A product or highly renovated buildings. Flexible spaces, large meeting areas, open floor plans, air filtration, outdoor plazas, and tons of natural light. And have downtown employees return to in-office work? Mostly yes. Looking at this chart showing employee visits to downtown over the last 4 years, you can clearly see that even though 2022, shown in magenta again, was still below 2019's pre-pandemic levels, we are seeing significantly more employees return to the office regularly than in 2021 or 2020. Downtown saw a 35% increase in employee visits in 2022 over the year prior. And as we're rounding out the first quarter of 2023, we're seeing a return to work recovery of about 78% for daytime office workers and 81% overall for downtown employees. Many larger urban areas are barely cracking 50% return to office. To round out our look at talent, let's take a quick look at industries that call our downtown home. As you can see, more than 1 in 4 businesses downtown are categorized as the higher paying professional or technical services. But beyond that, the other 3 in 4 are pretty well diversified among healthcare, finance, hospitality, real estate, and construction, with each of those industries representing between 5 and 10% of our businesses. And of course, not shown here is the substantive showing in public administration, that is, government employees. So we've given you a quick overview of this past year and some of the trends, and now we're going to bring on a few folks who are in the trenches each day in some of these sectors that are the backbone of downtown. Multifamily, arts and culture, and food and beverage. So as we quickly adjust, please join me in welcoming Tracy Doherty, Director of Marketing and Communications for Norwood, Matthew Schnipper, former food and drink director at The Independent, co-founder of the popular Facebook group COS Foodies, and the creator of State of Plate, a 5-episode podcast that examined the current and future state of the local restaurant industry post-pandemic, and our very own Michelle Winchell with Downtown Partnership, who serves as the executive director of Downtown Ventures, our nonprofit arm, and manager of Downtown's Creative District. Just give me a quick round of applause for our panelists. So Tracy, we'll start with you. You see the residents at Norwood's downtown properties, Eco, the Mayon Cascade, and now your new product that is leasing up Vim. 3 different complexes, different price points. Who are the tenants? Why are they attracted to downtown? And is Vim leasing up according to your expectations?
Is this on? Yeah. Is it on?
I think we
Can
are.
you hear me?
I think we're good.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So why are people, or who is moving downtown into these properties? As you saw, a lot of different kinds of people. I mean, people in different ages and stages are moving into all of our properties. All 3 of the properties that you mentioned, the Mayon Cascade and Vim and Eco, are distinct from one another. And part of that is because that's by design. You know, Jeff Finn, who's really behind those, created architecturally different footprints, different outlines for each. And then we tried to wrap those with, associated value propositions and brands. Perfect example is Vim, which is right there at Weber and Vermejo. Just opened a couple months ago. It's going really well. So a lot of demand for lease ups there. But Vim is all about simple. Simple living, simple floor plans. You don't get all the bells and whistles that you're going to get at a May or an Eco because you don't have the big pool, but you do have a hot tub, and you also pay $200 less per month in rent, which allows different people to come downtown and be part of our downtown. We've got a lot of young people who are leasing there, and we're really, really excited about it. So what do our residents like about living downtown? All of you. I mean, across the board, they love the fact that they can go downstairs, out the door, and go to restaurants and bars and shops and be part of the community.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm excited to hear that Vim is going well. As we mentioned earlier in this presentation, over 3/4 of downtown residents are renters. Are these folks engaged in their community? What's the mindset of a renter? And what would you advise us all to consider when we think of renters in our community?
Yeah, so we think that renters get a really bad rap. And it's kind of an old-fashioned reason. The reason is that, that the renter dynamic has changed. Meaning, if you look at millennials, if you look at a lot of younger folks, they're going to be renting for a long time. In fact, almost 15% of millennials think they'll always rent. They never plan to buy. And this isn't like a New York City type thing. This is a nationwide thing. And so we kind of have this old-fashioned idea in our heads like, oh, there's the renter mentality versus the owner mentality. And the renters don't really care, right? They go in their apartment and they shut the door and that's it. That is totally different than our experience. Our tenants are interested in getting engaged and getting to know each other in their community, in being active and being part of a community. And so we're lucky, as Norwood, we have a great partnership with Griffiths Blessing from a property management standpoint, and a call out to those property managers in those 3 properties, which are Mackenzie, Ashley, and Cheyenne, who work every day tirelessly to try to engage the tenants in each of those buildings, and also with all of you in each of their respective kind of barrios. But also Norwood is interested in up-leveling that. So how do we get people connected with each other? How do we get people to connect around downtown? And ultimately, how do we get people to connect to our city, to start to feel like Colorado Springs is home? Because I think that the cities of the future will win when those people who are renters are not seen as kind of a fly-by-night population. They're seen as the future of our city, and that they start to feel and act like citizens and owners of the city. I'll tell you one story that I think it kind of illustrates this. There is a resident at the Mayon Cascade who's probably in his 70s. He likes living in an apartment just functionally because he's in a wheelchair. But he's also created quite a community there. And his first birthday there, a whole bunch of the residents got together, got a cake, got cards, did a surprise party for him. I mean, it's just, that's not the typical renter profile that I think gives renters a bad name. But I want to invite everybody. It's my last, I probably went over it. But so we, as part of this, let's build this community kind of idea, started last year. We tried out this kickball tournament, which is called Downtowners Kickball, where we had all the residents at Eco versus all the residents at the May in America the Beautiful Park. It was a ton of fun. We had a great turnout. So we're doing it again. So watch out, June 11th, we're going to have Downtowners Kickball again. And obviously the bracket, because we're inviting, Gray Star and Widener and everybody else as they start to populate their new multifamilies to come join in the fun. So hopefully it'll just get bigger and bigger for our community as time goes on.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Tracy. Appreciate it. So next, we'll turn to Matt. Matt, how does this influx of new residents that we've been talking about impact downtown's growing restaurant scene?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to do one quick addendum update and tiny correction. I think you said COS Foodies I co-created. I don't want to take credit for that one. I actually did Culinary Colorado Springs, which used to be Culinary Distancing, which we started during the pandemic to support businesses. So we're still active. We almost have 9,000 members still. And we actually had our most successful post just the other day about Brother Luck changing Lucky Dumpling into folklore. Just went crazy. So we still have a good traffic there. And actually that answers the question too. So one of the best examples I have for what's changing, and I was talking to Brother about this just a couple weeks ago, for him to make that change, it had to do a lot with labor and food costs and other things, but also he was looking at all those apartments popping up right across the street from Lucky Dumpling and saying, pretty soon there's going to be, whatever it is, 500 people over there. Well, they're going to need that third space that's right down at ground level to go after work or whatever, and that's going to be their place, and they don't have to go far. They don't have to drive across town. They're going to walk to something just right there. So that's going to transform that little block, and we're going to see that in other places, I think, too. And that might actually attract more chefs to come do the same thing. And that will, I think we're going to see little micro pockets, too, like even Bobby Couch getting a liquor license for Green Line Grill. Okay, a few years ago, that probably didn't make sense for him, but as things fill in, that's going to be a good investment for him. Things like Bread and Butter Market hanging on, years ago people tried to do the markets downtown for, walkable, livable, but it was too early. It didn't happen. Now that's anchored and now that's happening because we actually have that infill. And I think I told you I was going to give you an addendum and update too. I wanted to say the Independent, as you probably are all following, they're going to do a little meeting tonight. 6035 is addressing the community with their situation. A bunch of us journalists got laid off last week. It's okay. We're all on good terms. I wish them the best. But I just want to let you know we're still going to continue food and drink coverage. So I just launched my Substack today, which is why I was up late last night. I would love to have you all there. So I want to keep talking about these businesses downtown, across the city. This is what I love to do. I love our town. So I'll be over there on the way out if you want to connect with me real quick. I want to make sure you guys all are up to date on these things. So I want to make sure people like Brother are getting the coverage they need. And so later tonight, I'll probably have a post again about folklore. I did a preview just 2 nights ago. So I want to show you some pictures and tell you all about it.
Yeah, well, and one more for you, and maybe you'll be talking about this here shortly then, but what is your hope for the future of our food and beverage industry, specifically downtown?
That slide we were talking about with the white kids in the pool with the the beer and all that. Let's talk about diversity. So downtown, just like the city, is really white, right? So we need diversity downtown too in the culinary scene. So it's not good enough just to have Hafa Adai or Saigon Cafe and then just a ton of comfort food, right? Like burgers, tacos, pizza. Can we white people decide to eat other things than those 3 things? And then attract those things. So like some of the best food in the city is on the southeast side. And I'd love to see more of that come downtown where we can have really authentic international cuisine. It used to be called ethnic, but that became a thing. So let's call it international cuisine. And what I don't know, because I'm not an expert in this part, is whether those rents are affordable for them. Because, of course, here on the southeast side, you could probably get a ton less per square foot. So I'm not going to solve this myself. I don't know if there's some like subsidized commercial rent or something or whatever. But what would it take to get diversity downtown? Also, what can we do as consumers? How do we want to spend our dollars? What do we want to see in the future? If you just keep eating that burger over and over and over again, all we're going to get is burgers. And they're not all that good. We all know this. I'll tell you all about that on my newsletter. So let's get good, diverse food downtown. And that's just my hope for the future. But like I was saying about Brother converting from Lucky Dumpling to folklore, now we're gonna have another Irish bar. That's fine, that's another thing that's, not just a burger, but I just hope that in the future we're gonna attract more chefs coming down as this grows. And some of them are gonna come down from Denver, just like Dos Santos did now with Dos Dos, Denver Biscuit, things like that. So I said this years ago, like if the Springs doesn't step up and if our chefs don't take it, Denver's gonna come get it. And then we're gonna get Denver leftovers or Denver expansion. So I wanna see it homegrown, and like I wanna see our local chefs and culinary scene grow up and do our own stuff and not just be like a Denver stamp. So back to diversity, but that wouldn't be just Denver part 2, let's be the Springs.
Yeah, absolutely, I think we can all agree with you on that. Thank you. And then finally, Michelle, you've got your finger on the pulse of downtown's creative district, from the gallery scene to live performances and much more. Perhaps more than any other industry, the arts and especially performing arts have had a longer recovery path from the pandemic. What are the national trends, and are you seeing those trends reflected locally?
Yes, our performing arts friends were hit particularly hard, especially in the first year of the pandemic. And we're seeing our national trends reflected here for sure. So nationally, ticket demand is down about 20 to 25% from 2019 numbers. And we're seeing some kind of stickiness of COVID behavior trends that have kind of carried on. And some of that is about patrons being uncomfortable returning to crowded arts venues, and some of it is just lower participation overall. So in our downtown cultural institutions last year, our attendance still had not quite rebounded to 2019 numbers. However, Cottonwood Center for the Arts reported its highest attendance year ever with 90,000 visitors. So we are seeing that our creative community here is resilient. And I think that looking at some of the national data, 2023 should be the year when our performing arts organizations kind of come back to those 2019 levels. So I think we're getting there. It's just been a particularly challenging path because as the ticket revenue was down, some of their production expenses were up with both with COVID safety measures that were particularly rigorous and often required by the unions, and then material expenses. If you think about theaters have to buy wood and things for sets too. So, but brighter things ahead.
Yeah, well, speaking of ahead, what do you think comes next in terms of patterns of arts participation?
Yeah, so even before the pandemic, of course, our cultural organizations are competing with the comfort of our sofas and our pets curled up next to us, and all of the wonderful things on our screens that we carry with us everywhere. And that's kind of got exacerbated by the pandemic when we're all trapped at home with all of our screens. So we're continuing to see those challenges. But one of the things that I think is positive that came out of the pandemic is we saw a lot of our cultural institutions really invest in their digital engagement, and that's not going away. There's some good national data that patrons now are engaging online with cultural organizations actually more than during the height of the pandemic. And so I think that's a key tool for our organizations going forward. It was a tool set that sometimes some of our older institutional arts organizations were less comfortable with, but quickly kind of got up to speed, and is a great way to connect with people. We also wanted to talk briefly about Kimball's sadly closed in our local cultural landscape. And our team is looking for prospects for that space on an ongoing basis. Austin's been involved with some of those conversations. But it's kind of a good way to think about how we engage patrons going forward. Colorado Creative Industries recently released the results of a multi-year study on the Colorado film industry, and it was from both market research and a bunch of interviews with industry insiders. And they just were really emphasizing the importance of incorporating experiential and multidisciplinary events, no matter what your discipline across the arts, that this is really the way to make something memorable that competes with either people's screens or the comforts of home. What's the experience that people can't have from their couch? What's the experience that's incredibly memorable that's gonna draw people to organizations? So I think that's what we're looking for from our arts organizations going forward, and people that create that sense of community really seem to have a lot more success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Michelle. And can we have a quick round of applause for all of our panelists here? Thank you. Okay, so new hotels, new residents, more people, new restaurants. What does all this mean? So I'm going to pass the ball off now to Chelsea Gondek, our Director of Planning and Mobility and Executive Director of the Downtown Business Improvement District. So join me in welcoming Chelsea to the stage.
Thank you, Austin. As you all know, in 2022, downtown continued to see an expansion of mobility options and enhancements to our outdoor spaces, which was vital, as we now know, for our rebounding tourism and employee population, and of course, our growing downtown residential population. Most notably was Mountain Metro Transit's launch of the ZEB, a free circulator running 7 days a week on Tejon Street, from Cache La Poudre to the north to Rio Grande to the south. This new service is a great choice for riders wanting to make it anywhere from Ed Robeson Arena to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, Widener Field, and all our restaurants and retailers in between. And it especially comes in handy if you choose to wear stilettos to work. I know from personal experience. As far as ridership goes, yes, it is being used, we promise you. We saw the highest ridership in September and October, with the most popular times being mid-morning and late afternoon. And for context, the annual ridership for this service line was greater than 7 of the 11 routes that come downtown. It's especially worth noting that despite having to reduce frequency, MMT's ridership was up nearly 60% from 2021. Furthermore, every single downtown route saw an increase from the year prior as well. In the meantime, the most frequented stops for the ZEB are at Nevada and Cache La Poudre, which is up near Ed Robeson Arena, as well as the Rio Grande and Cascade westbound stop, with southbound Tejon and Kiowa coming in at a close third. While this service has been successful, we still need a roadmap for transitioning the fleet to those quieter and cleaner electric vehicles. MMT did add 4 battery electric buses into the fleet in 2022, but none were for the ZEB route. However, the good news is that MMT is starting the process to establish a zero-emission vehicle transition plan. And furthermore, we are working with MMT on much-needed signage so that potential riders actually know things like the route of the ZEB, where the stops are, and all the other helpful information that you probably want to know before hopping on a bus. In 2022, we also saw the completion of the 1-year pilot program for electric scooters. And I'm extremely happy to report that no one died. Yeah! And we may have even won over some of the early naysayers. While one of the designated service providers exited the market, Lime has continued business, making 2022 the first full year of scooter operations, with many more anticipated. Designated parking hubs have climbed to 70 locations. Lime has deployed over 300 scooters, and reports of misuse have significantly diminished. In 2022 alone, Lime saw over 165,000 trips, with riders traveling over 239,000 miles. Or, put another way, 100 miles more than the distance from the Earth to the moon. With the downtown core in Old Colorado City seeing the most ridership, as depicted in the hotspot map. Next, and certainly not least, Pike Ride continued into its 4th year of record-breaking ridership, with a nearly 50% increase in trips over the year prior. Operations added 8 new hubs for a total of 60 throughout the central and western areas of town, and a fleet increase brought the total number of electric bikes to 375. The most frequented hubs remain those up at Colorado College, as well as Acacia Park and the Tejon Strip. Although mileage was down from 2021, Pike Ride saw an increase in trips and unique riders. This is likely because there was more recreational use for joyrides in 2021. You know, when we all really needed to get out of the house. While 2022 saw a return to normalcy, as in rides for commuting and getting specifically from point A to point B. This normalcy found that riders rode enough miles to travel around the world 2.3 times. Moreover, the average trip distance was just under 2 miles. I've said it before, and I will continue to say it, so I say it again now. With a growing downtown residential population, it's becoming more important than ever to support our micromobility options. Yeah. Together, our micromobility services resulted in over 218,000 trips and over 292,000 miles, which equated also to nearly 260,000 pounds of carbon emission reductions. So how are we doing compared to the city overall when it comes to mobility? First off, I'll note that our walk, bike, and transit scores saw no change from last year, meaning downtown is still ranking higher than the city overall, but there were no significant changes or investments in improved infrastructure from last year. Furthermore, downtown is considered the second most walkable neighborhood in the city. Who is ahead of us, you ask? Shooks Run, with just 3 more points sitting at a walk score of 72. The geographic area of this neighborhood is a little different, but I'm sure that we can invest in downtown to bring it up to the top spot. However, the lack and change of these mobility scores was not just a local phenomenon. Taking a look at our peer cities, we saw that bike scores remained stagnant across the board. And on an interesting note, a majority of our peer cities actually lost transit points in 2022, with only Salt Lake City and the dreaded Huntsville, in addition to Colorado Springs, holding steady. Furthermore, the only city that increased walkability was Salt Lake City, with a whopping 8-point jump from last year. And what about our green spaces? In October, we had the ribbon cutting for the new Acacia Park playground, an investment of over $1 million into this historic park, giving the playground a much-needed renovation. The new playground features a Ninja Warrior-like climbing structure with endless routes for imaginative play for children of all abilities. You'd be hard-pressed to find this place empty on a nice day downtown, or even a cold one. So now that we know what 2022 looked like, the next question is, what is yet to come? Well, we've already opened a handful of new storefront businesses, and we have nearly 20 more in the pipeline for 2023, and it's only March. Despite the ongoing challenges of small business, there are passionate entrepreneurs ready to give it a go in downtown. Pikes Peak State College just unveiled their newly renovated Learning Commons at the downtown campus. The Commons is the first communal space of its kind on the campus, and includes a computer lab, tutoring center, and cafe and lounge spaces for students to linger on campus between classes. PPSC also intends to bring its humanity courses to downtown, which is completely suitable for the historic and cultural heart of the city. And expect to see computer science courses as well, as PPSC is eager to connect students to downtown tech giants like BlueStack and companies at Catalyst Campus. And the Legacy Loop continues with improvements. Prep work has begun on a 1.5-mile section of the Rock Island Trail that will not only link the Pikes Peak Greenway and Shooks Run Trail to complete the northern connection of Legacy Loop, but will also extend further east, connecting bike routes for central residential areas to downtown. The Rock Island Trail extension will be a $2.6 million project made possible by funding through TOPS and other grants. While this connection has been many years in the making, it includes enhancements to a section of my bike commute, so I'm personally extremely excited. We also have the Tejon reconfiguration coming up. As one of downtown's signature streets, the space reallocations in this project will focus on creating a vibrant, walkable environment that supports our key retail, restaurant, and entertainment nodes, while also bringing a fresh face to the historic busy corner. And next month, we'll be breaking ground on ArtSpace, the DDA-directed initiative to bring 51 units of affordable housing for artists and over 20 artist studios to the heart of the cultural district. And a little treat for our 4-legged and sometimes 3-legged new residents is downtown's first dog park. The city's Department of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services has issued an RFP for the construction as part of the Antlers Park Master Plan renovations that should be completed by late summer of this year. As you can see on the screen, Team Dog at the partnership is very excited about this. Team Cat doesn't really stand anywhere. Summer will also see the return of key events that fill our hotel rooms, with a few exciting additions this year. Switchbacks just announced that Widener Field has been selected for the 2023 USL Summer Showcase, and over at Ed Robeson Arena, we'll see the 2023 World Jump Rope Competition, which aims to fill about 3,000 room nights citywide. Numerous stakeholders, including the Downtown Partnership, continue the local groundwork for an additional form of transit, passenger rail. The city led a site evaluation study for locating a passenger rail station in response to the parallel efforts of both Amtrak and the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. While several areas in the city were initially identified for evaluation, the top 6 ranked sites were all within the downtown area. And of course, we can't forget the single largest and most comprehensive watershed visioning effort in the city's history, the COS Creek Plan. It was released last year, and it will be a guiding force for years to come. The study area spans from the northern edge of Monument Valley Park to the southeast of Dorchester Park. The plan outlines a variety of implementable projects to maintain and restore the creek's environmental qualities, to promote economic vitality and quality of life for citizens, and to greatly enhance and expand opportunities for recreation and relaxation. These developments include everything from improved pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure along the corridor that increases access to adjacent neighborhoods, including downtown, to water activities such as fishing, tubing, and stand-up paddleboarding. As the public excitement grows, the project team is actively engaging with public, private, and philanthropic funding sources to get a high-priority project rolling this year. And there we have it. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I'd like to remind you that our Development Toolkit website is the go-to source for business and development prospects. Otherwise, feel free to join us for a drink, linger with your colleagues, and have a great evening.